in all honesty, I've been checking the numbers when I post, and we are up to like 5 or 7 now. So
5 or 7.
More people have been tuning in. So that's I find that exciting. I know that in this day and age, those aren't great numbers, but I like them.
Thank you to the 5 or 7.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the content.
So, so the movie that we are reviewing today talks a lot about tropes or stock characters. Kind of Mr. Professor Man, Mr. Theater Masters of Fine Arts over here. Please explain to us what a stock character or a trope is.
A stock character is a character who is easily identifiable to a mass audience. This is someone that you can pick out immediately. You know who they are. You know what role they fill in the story. Originally brought to prominence by street performers, the Commedia dell'arte, as a way of being
audience shorthand.
Yeah, exactly. As a way of being able to tell their story to a wide range of audience. Sometimes audiences that didn't speak the same language as they did.
So in like Commedia dell'arte, a lot like anime, they relied on specific physical characteristics.
Yes.
For what their character.
Yeah, masks and costumes. The best way I used to explain it when I was teaching high school is that think of a movie or a TV show set in a high school. And who are the characters that are in just about every high school movie or TV show? The jock, the cheerleader,
nerd,
the artsy girl.
Yeah.
You know.
Basically the 5 people who sit in the Breakfast Club.
Exactly. So but these are characters that when you see them, you know exactly who they are.
Right.
And you know exactly who they are by the way they're dressed, by, the way everyone refers to them. So you don't need to be told that's who that is. You automatically know, and then they can jump right into whatever the story is.
Okay. So you talked about the ones like the high school movie ones. What are some of the bigger ones that you would say follow along?
I think every genre has their stock characters or their trope characters. Like literally think of any genre. Another good one I used to use as an example, the horror movie.
Okay.
What are the stock characters of a horror movie?
So you've got the virgin girl. You got the jokey guy.
The stoner.
Yeah. Well, I would basically, the shorthand for me would be the Scooby Gang.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Smart girl, kind of implied airheaded girl.
Pretty girl, the jockey leader, the stoner.
Right.
So yeah, any genre that you can name has their stock characters.
Okay. So what are some of your favorite then?
Oh, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because I think it depends very much on what the story does with them.
Okay.
Because stock characters are not a bad thing. Tropes are not a bad thing. It's what the story does with them. Do they use them in interesting ways, or do they
just follow the same plot?
Yeah. Do they use them to subvert? I hate to bring this up, so please pardon me. But
you're going to talk about South Park, aren't you?
I am not going to talk about South Park, actually, but I am going to talk about Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
Please do not take this as an endorsement of the creative mind behind the franchise or her twisted, wrong views.
Right.
So please, but it's a good example.
The Drive Home Reviews podcast supports the rights of trans people.
Very much so. So please do not interpret this as an endorsement in any way, shape, or form. But one thing that the Harry Potter franchise did very well is it used stock characters but then subverted them.
Okay.
And used them in different ways. Like we all, Neville Longbottom is the essential nerd. Klutzy nerd. And through the course of the series, they subvert him and make him a hero.
And then also Matthew, what's his face, just grew up to be hot.
I know, right? Of all of them, like the whole series is just littered with the stock types. Snape is the stock type of the mean teacher. But then they subvert and what his real motivation was the entire time. So archetypes, stock types, tropes are not bad in and of themselves.
Right. I think the X-Men also would be an example of this, especially the newer. We've been watching, what's it called? X-Men 97?
X-Men 97. Badass.
And they've taken Magneto, who was kind of a villainous character for a lot of it, and he's kind of become more of the champion of the mutants.
Okay.
And it also that's kind of been from the beginning. He's always championed mutant rights. He just had a different idea of how to go about it.
Yeah.
So I would say, and plus the whole concept of the X-Men in general, like the mutants, which history tells us are supposed to be the bad guys, right? The scary monsters.
Yeah.
Are the mutants are actually the heroes in this situation.
Yeah, I mean that's very true. That is a good point.
I could go on for hours about the genius of X-Men and the allegories. Anyways, but so what are some? Let's talk about some movies that we see the tropes in. I know one of the kinds of movies that you love that turn tropes on its head, or at least mock them, are things like Scary Movie.
Yeah.
Or what was the other one?
Airplane. The Naked Gun. A lot of those 80s.
Not Another Teen Movie.
Yeah.
So, the Leslie Nielsen kind of oeuvre of parody movies, but also the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a little bit of a run of those kind of parody movies.
Yeah,
too.
but I'm going to say that a lot of the 2000 ones were not good.
Okay.
I think Scary Movie had some good parts. I think Not Another Teen Movie had some good parts, but compared to The Naked Gun and Airplane and Hot Shots, or the works of Mel Brooks, they were very lazy. But they did well. Especially, I think Scary Movie is a good one to kind of point out with what we're talking about today, because that was done by the Wayans brothers.
Right.
So that one and another one of theirs, I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker.
Right, yeah.
Which is a parody of blaxploitation movies, is taking these things from a black perspective.
Yeah, I think that the Wayans brothers, especially Marlon and Damon,
Sean Wayans?
Yeah, Marlon and Sean. They were a lot about subverting expectations. I mean, they did White Chicks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, taking the blackface character and completely flipping it.
Yeah.
Another Terry Crews vehicle there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, yeah, I would say, I mean, Keenan Ivory Wayans with the, oh gosh, what was the name of that show? I loved it.
In Living Color.
In Living Color.
Yeah.
Doing a sketch show that focused on diverse voices was, I mean, that was subverting.
And yeah, doing a lot. Yeah, and doing a lot of very, very edgy things.
Right.
Really, I loved In Living Color. I really did, but yeah, its main focus was was edgy for the time, and even now.
I think that, and this isn't something that we're going to talk about in the movie we watched today. It was about
I'm going to walk very carefully here on how I describe this. They did a sketch, and they only did it once. They said to be continued, but I don't think they ever did, where Damon Wayans plays the descendant of a runaway slave who's been living in a cave for 100 years and finally ventures out into the then-present 1990s and is shocked by the way black people are acting. And it highlights really how they're still kind of being persecuted and still kind of being,
right,
pushed around.
I wouldn't say kind of. I would say definitely.
I say kind of just because I'm trying very carefully to use the right terminology and not.
So yeah.
I don't want to. Don't cancel me.
I think that the concept of Hollywood theater entertainment has predominantly been inspired by diverse populations, but commandeered, or you could even say colonialized, by white people. And so the white people set the tropes and set the expectations, and the diverse populations are coming in and saying, "Oh no, we're gonna flip that on its head."
Well, especially Ben Vereen in the documentary B-Way, the American Musical, talked about how white people established the entire dialogue of how black people were presented. The over-exaggerated Southern accents.
Yes, the facial features.
Yeah, the big eyes and all of that.
What's it called?
Minstrel shows? Is that what you're...
Yeah, the minstrel shows, but there was also a specific character, Jim Crow.
Yeah.
The Jim Crow look. So,
and that when black people started kind of getting into show business, a lot of them, like the great Burt Williams, were people who said, well, I can do that better than they can.
Right.
So they kind of had to they had
they
had to inhabit the trope.
Right.
In order to kind of get a foothold.
Well, was the first black woman to win an Oscar? Wasn't that
that was Hattie McDaniel
for Gone with the Wind?
Yeah.
Where she plays a mammy.
Yeah.
That gets slapped around.
Actually, they never slap her.
Oh right, they slap
Butterfly McQueen.
McQueen.
No, they never slap Mammy.
Which is the best name. Like, if I saw the name Butterfly McQueen now, I would assume that was a drag queen. But no,
really, I would assume it was a badass private detective.
Oh, that's a good one.
Butterfly McQueen.
If we ever have a baby, can we call it Butterfly? Anyways, so
well, let's ask your perspective here on especially tropes and archetypes surrounding female characters.
Well, okay, so females specifically tend to be that they crazy about the wedding, want to get married, gotta have kids, blah 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 blah. One of the movies that I recently made you watch that you've never seen was Working Girl.
Yeah,
from the 1980s.
I'd never actually seen Working Girl.
And Working Girl really subverts that trope in the 80s, turns it on its head, and she, basically turned her nose down at her marriage proposal and, staying home and having babies and choosing her career instead, so that, like, now that would be a lot more common, but in the 80s that was...
Now they go the other way. Now with that isn't the basis of literally every Hallmark movie. Yes. Oh, you spent too much time on your career and you don't have love and the family and Christmas.
Well, and that's another one. The Hallmark movies, they definitely lean into the tropes.
Oh, yeah.
That is, is the Hallmark movie the modern commedia dell'arte? Do we have stock characters that we lean on?
I would say yes, but Are you ready for this?
Okay.
I did a paper on this in college, and I used this as an example when I was teaching high school. The best example of a modern day commedia dell'arte is professional wrestling.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Because you have the stock types. They've evolved over the years.
Right.
But you have the stock types and the stock characters. You know who they are.
Well, there's little things that clue you in, because wrestlers often will do heel turns, or, they'll change loyalties. But you can tell because, so one of my favorite things is when a older wrestler wears a shirt while wrestling, they are often the good guy.
Yes.
And when the older wrestler, we're talking like 40 or over,
45 or over, yeah.
or over, if they don't wear a shirt while they're wrestling, they're often the bad guy.
This is true.
Yes.
This is, yeah. But it's a little different now. It's changed. But like in the 80s especially.
Right.
Like you could, hi, I'm the evil rich guy. I'm the evil foreigner. I'm the American.
Yes. But there are still a lot of clues. Like, okay, so so one of the tag teams in AEW right now, the Young Bucks, they were previously good guys, and when they were good guys, they wore these bright colors, like animal prints, neon.
A lot of tassels, a lot of 80s.
Tennis shoes, like custom tennis shoes and stuff. And now that they are on the heel side of it, they're in these very tailored suits. And, your thing, loafers with no socks.
I hate loafers with no socks.
But that is the bad guys. They wear them. So like they have it's like the corporate business guy look. That has been a pretty common bad guy trope for.
So that would be the more.
Well, look at Hulk Hogan in the 90s, where he went from wearing yellow
to the black and white. Yep. So that's so kind of segueing into the review portion, unless there's something else you wanted to.
Well, I think that like when we talk about stock things and character tropes and things that indicate what is good and bad, we need to, as a population, kind of, especially those of us who are white or we look white, we need to be cautious of the terminology and the tropes that we follow. So I think of the term black hat, white hat as good, like, referring to someone who's on the good side of things versus the bad side of things.
Which takes it from the black and white westerns.
Right. But when you're referring to things that are black as the bad things, it's really easy to make that jump to like skin color as well.
Well, another one that I really didn't realize until recently. So color me, a little blind there. And you actually pointed it out to me, is how many of the classic Disney villains are queer coded.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And it's not anything I ever put my finger on prior, but when you look back, especially with how many times we watch some of these movies,
it's what my youngest uses to fall asleep.
But you look at Ursula, Scar, Jafar.
Llama! That's a llama!
Oh God!
Hey, I just saw, and goats. Sorry.
Anyway, Gaston, or even Melissa,
Jafar, especially Maleficent.
I can never pronounce her name.
Ursula.
Yeah, a lot of them are very queer coded.
Like the similarity between the character of Ursula and the drag queen Divine are like, I believe that's
who they based her on.
Yes.
That was the look that they based her on.
So yes, when your villains are all of the queer coded people, then it can be easy to conflate in your mind when you see someone acting in a way that you may interpret as
Yeah, whether you mean to or not.
Right.
And another one, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here. A while ago, before I moved even, Lindsay Ellis, who did a lot of brilliant YouTube video essays on film criticism, one of the people that inspired me to start doing film criticism, did an entire thing about the way trans characters are presented in media, and she made the point that, for a long time, every time there was a trans character, they were a sex worker.
Yes.
And I remember watching that going, no, that's not right. What about, no, that one was what about the, no, that one, it's like holy shit.
And how many of them ended up dead?
Yeah, it's like it's one of those things you don't realize that, and I also don't think, I should stress this, I don't think in most cases the people making the content are trying to brainwash you.
No, but this is what you need. Like, this is why you need diverse readers.
Yes.
This is why you need someone to look at this. Someone who is a trans person to look at what you're creating and be like, hey, maybe we don't give this gay person AIDS.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's just try not having a gay person with AIDS.
Like I say, that is the danger of tropes and archetypes and shorthand, is that you lean on it so much, it
colors how you think about real life.
Exactly. So
there was one more that I was going to talk about before we went off on this tangent, and that is the archetype of the gypsy woman.
Yeah.
Which is something we've talked about before.
Yes.
And even some of my things that I love, like Angel and Buffy, present gypsies as people with kind of malicious intent, who travel around and steal things from people, and who are going to cast spells on you. And not to say that I won't, but no, it's a very specific character type. The quote unquote, and I'm saying the word gypsy because that is my heritage. I prefer the word Roma. But yeah, it is, I think when you are part of that kind of heritage or that kind of ethnicity, you see it more. And I think that the whole gypsy woman aesthetic and personality and trope is very fetishized by a lot of people. If you actually look into the history and the culture, they're actually a very conservative, very spiritual, very close-knit groups of people that are not necessarily wanting, a lot of times they're presented as almost like strippers, like exotic dancers, when that's not actually how the culture works. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
All right, so you were going to go on about something else.
Well, I was just going to say that, and this is because this is the basis of the movie we're watching. Again, that archetypes, stock characters, they're not inherently bad. And again, I don't think that in most cases when they're used in a movie that they are attempting to be harmful, but they have a tendency of bleeding over into stereotype.
Right.
And this is kind of the basis of the film that we are going to be talking about today.
Yes.
So, we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we will discuss the American Society of Magical Negroes.
All right. So, we saw previews for this back in January.
Yeah.
And then when we saw that it had come to streaming, we were like, oh yeah, that's what we're gonna watch next.
Yeah. So, and not surprisingly, I don't think it had a a big run in the theaters. It doesn't seem like it.
Well, definitely not around here. We live in the Midwest, so.
Also, before we get going, we said this during our last review, and I think we said it during another one, but I think it is important to state. We are going to be coming at this from a predominantly white or white presenting viewpoint.
So, yes, obviously, take what people of color say about this much more seriously than what we say about it.
Yeah.
We give our perspective as, you know, the palm-colored people, but
this especially is a movie that I think you kind of like American Fiction,
where you need to seek out black voices,
how the people it's about,
right?
How they view it.
So yes,
you know. So we're going to give our opinion, our unbiased, honest opinion, as we always do. But be aware that we're not the people this was written about. So
right.
We can only relate to it so far.
Right.
You know, so seek out black voices on this movie and see what they got to say.
I will say though that I think white people need to watch this movie.
I do too. I definitely do.
So yeah, okay. So this movie, The American Society of Magical Negroes, was written and directed by Kobe Libby, who I'm not sure. Did you see that? If what else he had written or directed?
No, it didn't look like a whole lot. He looks like he's been in a lot of kind of bit parts, little guest starring roles on things. He's nobody that I immediately recognize.
Okay, so this is probably his first big directorial.
I'm going to say yes, but if we're wrong on that, sorry.
So starring Justice Smith, who I always have to remind myself is not Will Smith's son. Like, it seems like he would be, right?
Again, color us racist. I thought so too.
No, Jaden Smith.
Jaden Smith
is Will Smith's son. Justice Smith is an actor who's very good.
Yes. Which I'm glad I saw him in this, because when I looked him up, he was in those god-awful Jurassic World movies as a stereotypical black nerd.
Yeah.
So I was like, I hated that character, and now he's in this, and he's like, oh, he's really good, actually. Okay.
Yeah, he's a very good actor. We saw him in something else recently, but I don't remember what.
Yeah, me neither.
And then the phenomenal David Alan Grier.
Oh my God, love David Alan Grier, and we were talking about In Living Color, and he was big on that.
Yeah.
Like, David Alan Grier is so funny.
He is, and he's just like so dependable.
Yes.
Like in everything, you just know whatever he's playing, he's going to be.
Yes, I want to see more David Alan Grier.
Plus, we have a whole slew of black character actors and actors and actresses in this that are just keep popping up. Aisha Hines from 911 and Nicole Byer, and like it's like all of these just not huge parts, just kind of small parts that that black actor and actresses are popping up in. I loved it.
So a little context, and I didn't know this.
Okay.
So a little context. So the term magical Negro is a literary term coined for a black character whose only role in the plot is to further the emotional stability of the protagonist.
The generally white protagonist.
Yes. Interesting that we were talking about Not Another Teen Movie, because in that one they make kind of the same joke with the token black guy.
Right.
Who says, I'm just supposed to stay out of the conversation and occasionally add things like, shit, damn, and that is whack.
That was Dule Hill, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, basically token black character, but take it to another level where you are like only existing to make life better for the white person.
Yes. So that is where the and they lean very heavily on that. So our basic story is our main character, Justice Smith, is recruited because of his temperament and his personality. Very
basically the way he interacts around or lives in the world surrounded by white people.
Yeah. Very apologetic, very soft-spoken, very
nice.
Overly nice.
Right.
So because of this, he is recruited into this magical secret society.
Right.
Whose whole job is to keep white people calm.
Right.
And because, as David Allen puts it in a great bit of writing and acting, that the most dangerous animal in the world is a white person.
Who's uncomfortable.
So their job is to try to keep white people comfortable with black people. And the way they do this is by leaning very heavily into the stereotypes, the archetypes of that have been portrayed of black people throughout history.
Right. Like one of the big factors is they have to act in what a white person would consider an authentically black way. So we've got Justice Smith's character Aaron takes on his first job at a tech company. I thought the way they presented the tech company was just great.
Yeah.
Like exactly what you would expect with the Legos and the games and we're not going to use real titles. We're going to go by boat
titles. Yeah.
But really focusing on that we're not toxic, but we're actually toxic.
Yes.
For culture. Trying
very hard that kind of toxicity where you are trying so hard to present to the world that you're not toxic, that you actually are being toxic.
Right.
Whether you are aware of it or not.
So, they're working with his client.
Yeah.
And who has suffered his meter of white tears or uncomfortableness has like skyrocketed into the red, and it turns out that it's because he's created a face recognition system that does not actually recognize the face of black people, because there were no people of color on his team when they were creating it.
Yes. And
so Aaron's job is to kind of alleviate that and make him more comfortable again.
Yeah, to prove to him that he's not a bad guy.
Right.
Now into this is where the real story actually kicks in. Comes Lizzie.
Played by Ann Lee Bogan, who is, I believe, an Asian actress.
I believe so. And I was very disappointed to see she does not have a lot of credits, because I thought she was fantastic in this.
Yeah, she was really great.
And Aaron, our main character, immediately kind of forms a connection with her. There's a real spark. There's a real relationship. But his white client decides, as Aaron puts it, he colonizes Aaron's crush.
Right.
And decides he wants her, and Aaron is bound by the laws of the society that he has to now do everything he can to ensure that his white friend ends up with the girl he is in love with.
Right.
And this is where the conflict starts to come in.
So I think I would like to not really go into any more plot, because I don't want to give any spoilers out on this one. So let's talk about what they did well.
Okay.
I think one of the things that this movie did well for its white audience was that it explained things in a way that you were getting a look into the black experience. I'm not going to say that I automatically now understand what it's like to be black in America, because I don't. But by the time that you get to the point where they're explaining to you how uncomfortable it is to be a black person who is constantly having to monitor his situation at all times to ensure his safety, you've gotten enough sympathy and enough you like the character of Aaron enough that you sympathize with it. Mm-hmm. Is what I think.
Talking about what this movie does well, I'm going to be very brief about it and say it does just about everything really well. What I like about this movie is kind of like what you were saying, is this is an excellent use of a fantasy sci-fi framework.
I don't know if I call it sci-fi.
But I'm using that as, again, kind of a descriptive term. In order to highlight real social issues. I think of the Twilight Zone.
Okay.
When I watch this movie, or because science fiction fantasy at its best is when it is using its fantastic framework to highlight real things that are going on. And I think through the use of the magical society, this very kind of Harry Potter for black people,
right,
kind of thing, to draw attention to, as you said, the experience of being a black person in America, and how you constantly have to watch yourself, you constantly have to make sure you're calming everybody down, and how frustrating, and not just how frustrating, but kind of like we were talking about in the intro, how these things become so much a part of your everyday life, you don't realize how much they are affecting you as a person.
One of the things that one of the characters talked about was saying how always making sure that your hands are visible at all times so they don't think you have a weapon hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
And like how emotionally draining and exhausting it must be.
Yes, exactly.
Like
and
to just constantly be having to be aware of where your body is and what your body is doing in all situations to make sure that you are not intimidating anybody accidentally.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I found interesting, as you know, because we do this while we watch movies, is we look up, the actors and the directors, and is that on IMDb, this only has a 2-point-something rating. Rotten Tomatoes, it has like a 63, I think.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting is looking at some of the comments. What I found most of them were about, the ones that were negative, was that the trailer lied. They thought this was going to be like a satire and and more magic and all this, that, and the other things. Like, first of all, I don't know what trailer these people were watching.
There was plenty of magic.
The trailers told you exactly what this movie was going to be about.
Right.
And secondly, that the magic is not the story.
No.
It's the storytelling device.
Yeah.
So, sorry again if you were expecting Harry Potter for black people, but that's not what this was.
I think that I would put this in the category of magical realism.
Yeah.
Like, it's real life with a magical element to kind of, help tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there was a generous helping of comedy and levity in addition to these hard, uncomfortable topics.
Yeah, that's what satire does. The director, who also wrote the movie, to use a common internet term, understood the assignment.
It's weird when you say that.
Yeah, he understands exactly how to use satire and the framework of a fantasy movie in order to make his greater point, and he did it really, really well. And I also got to give big ups Another criticism I saw is that, it was too talky. It was too...
They talk too much.
Yeah, they talked too much. That was one of the reviews I read. It was too... It had... Someone used as a negative criticism says it feels like a stage play that they turned into a movie. I think that's a plus. Wow, the characters actually talked and actually had development and actually...
there was great character development.
And relationship development. Like, Lizzie and Aaron's relationship is not just a rom-com, meet cute, I hate you, but I love you. It's like, no, they actually built a rapport and built a relationship.
And they have the awkward conversations, too.
Yeah.
Like, where they're being honest with each other. And, like, I think this movie is a lot about awkward conversations.
Yes.
And uncomfortable feelings. And I think that you need that. There's plenty of laughter. There's plenty of levity. There's this whole Green Mile groin grab bit
joke
that just I still cracks me up when I think about it. And I don't know how. Oh, excuse me, that was a big yawn. I don't know how someone goes into this movie and doesn't understand what it's going to be about. This movie was exactly what I thought it was going to be about.
Yeah, exactly. Like the trailer, I heard, like I said, some of the things I read, the trailer lied. No, the trailer did not lie.
No.
The trailer gave you the entire plot and told you exactly what was going to happen. Maybe they cut it so you thought it was going to be more of a comedy.
I think it's very comedic.
But no, this movie was this is exactly what it says it was on the box.
Yeah.
I was not disappointed. And again, the writing and the acting is so good.
Justice Smith is really...
Since I only knew him previously from the Jurassic World movies, I was like, oh shit, but damn, he is good and so natural.
Yeah, very understated.
Yes, this is one of those performances that I felt like the character was real.
Right.
I felt like that was Aaron.
I would say that about Anthony Bogan too, and even the guy who played Jason was for what the character that he was playing, the white guy Jason, he was spot on.
I thought he was a little over the top, but I think that was the point. To show how a person...
I don't think he was over the top because I've seen people act like that.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, also Justice Smith's voice.
Oh yeah.
He needs to be doing some voiceover.
He's got a great voice.
He's got a great voice.
And the young lady who played Lizzie, who we already talked about, she was phenomenal, and she and Justice Smith had amazing chemistry.
They did. They really had good chemistry.
And if this was the actor, then I give him a lot of credit. The actor who played Jason, is that she had no chemistry with him.
Right.
And I don't know if that was because the actors actually didn't have chemistry, or the acting was so good that he was able to create such a chemistry-less person.
So there's this climactic scene that you would know when you got to it. It's kind of chaos.
Yeah.
There's 4 people
all talking at once.
One time. But the genius of this movie is that every one of them is clear. Their motive, their emotion in that moment, their point of view is all clear. And for the fact that it's all happening at one time, I thought that was very impressive.
Yeah. I got to go back to the white guy for a second and say,
always back to the white guy.
No, what I liked about him is that even though he's the closest thing to an antagonist we have, I wouldn't call him the villain necessarily, but I like how even though he is kind of over the top and a bit douchey, he also is not necessarily a bad guy.
Right.
He's entitled, and he as Aaron kind of lays out in his big climactic speech, he's used to the world working a certain way,
Right.
because that's what he's always been shown that I know it's a buzz term that a lot of people have a hard time with, the concept of white privilege. But I think this movie does a great job of illustrating this is what white privilege is.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you are necessarily a bad person.
No.
It is just saying that you have been shown that this is the way the world works, and you have a hard time understanding why other people are so upset about everything.
And my coworker who once said, everybody has the same opportunity in America, and that people just decide to use their opportunity in different ways. Like, no, white guy from the Midwest, that is not true.
Yeah, so I think that was something, because it would have been very easy, and I think he kind of tiptoes up to the line a bit.
Right.
Of just making him an out-and-out ass.
No, I mean, he does some questionable things.
He does.
Like, all he had to do was put a person of color on his team to make sure that the face recognition could recognize black people. Like, that's all he had to do.
But like I said, I like that. Yeah, he's douchey, he's entitled, but you can tell he's not doing it to be douchey. He doesn't realize he's being douchey.
Yeah.
What I also liked is that, and you kind of talked about this last night when we watched it, is that during that chaotic scene at the end, he has a moment of realization where he says, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And it's the first really honest thing he actually says.
Yeah.
And I remember you were saying that you kind of wanted to see what happened to him.
Yeah.
And that's true, but at the same time, like we were saying,
That's not the point.
It's not his story. It doesn't matter what happened to him. This was about Aaron discovering what this had done to him.
Right. So, yeah. Like, I think that's part of our ingrained thing is, even when the story is about the black guy, you want to know what happened to the white guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Of course, I always want to know what happened to the villain a lot of times.
Yeah.
I want to know what happened to Draco Malfoy. It's just, you're always curious about how those things. So yeah, I think this movie is phenomenal.
What did you think about? So the society uses magic in a very kind of steampunky way, very different than a lot of ways we've seen. They deal with a lot of like mists and whatnot. Candles. What did you think of that?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was I thought it was really beautifully done. I loved the way the magic and the magical world was.
The look of it.
Like I said, a cross between Hogwarts and the Men in Black.
Love it, yeah.
So yeah, I really loved it.
So yeah, I think there's just so many really great moments in this, and an overall, like, I would say, like, an important storyline.
Yeah.
I would call this an important movie.
Well, you know what also is interesting to me, and this is a point that I would really like to hear a black audience or a black critic's thoughts. I like how in the end, and I'm going to try to do this without spoilers, so Aaron obviously defies the society.
Right.
And kind of makes the discovery for himself that it should not be his job to make white people comfortable.
Right.
But what I found interesting about the movie is it never really made it seem like the society was wrong in what they were doing.
Right. I think it's more of the idea that in the world like it is now, especially in the United States like it is now, there are people who have to do what they have to survive.
Yes.
And this is it's interesting because we're having this whole debate online about if you were a woman in the woods, would you you rather be there with a man that you don't know or a bear? And women almost unanimously choose the bear. Because you have to know how you can navigate your own safety. And I think that must be what it's like for a person of color in the world right now, especially in the United States right now, knowing you have to do what it takes to be able to come home alive at the end of the day, which is another thing the movie talks about. You know, if you come home alive at the end of the day, you've won.
Yeah, and it seemed like the shorthand they were going for is that the society is using a more old school, like it's made up mostly of older people, and Aaron kind of represents the younger generation.
Right.
So it's not saying that what the older generation did or what they had to do to survive was wrong.
Right.
It's just saying that there are that maybe it's the young people of today can make it better.
Right. Can do things in a way that makes life a little easier for them.
Yeah. So, but because that's another thing. It would have been very easy for the filmmaker to do is just say what the society is doing is wrong and backwards, and it's like it's not saying that. It's saying it's what you had to do.
Right.
Sad as that is.
So there's just like, and like we said, it's coming from the place of you know, white people, but I felt like this made its points, its multiple points, very clearly and accessibly.
Yes, I think this is a movie. I remember back in 2020 when things were really starting to unravel, and you kept hearing people say, "Educate yourself."
Right.
This is a film that I would point to and say this is an educational film.
Right.
You know, I think this is one that educates, kind of like American Fiction.
Yeah.
Was or is.
Yeah, I think and we will, like, both of us have done a lot of work to try to examine our own internal biases and racism, and neither of us will ever say that we have gotten to the point where we are not racist. We are perfectly accepting of all people, and because we know it's a constant education. You have to be constantly working and listening to the voices of Black people, of diverse creators, and I think this movie is a really great way to do that.
I agree.
All right.
Is there anything that you didn't like?
You know, I don't think so. I think I would have liked to see more of the Magical Society training. Like, I really enjoyed that part, but
because there were a lot of like pictures on the wall. It would have been neat to kind of get some background on who some of those people were.
Right, but here's the thing: is that I wonder how many people, like, how many of those, if you're a Black person, you knew who those were.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point.
Right, and like we just haven't been educated because the American school system really fails us on that point. So, yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
There's nothing I didn't like, but there is one thing I'll bring up that I would throw a challenge flag on.
Okay.
And this is just something, again, I would be very fascinated to hear the Black perspective. One of the funny things that they did, and you mentioned this earlier, during his training, they used some parodies of popular magical Negroes in cinema to illustrate kind of what it is, and they do one that's like a pool player version of the Legend of Bagger Vance,
Right.
which was hysterical because it was like almost word for word. You know, the way a man grips his pool stick is the way he grips his life. You know, that kind of thing. And I like the Legend of Bagger Vance, But I definitely see where they're coming from. Like, that's when you're like, yeah, that's that. The other one they do a parody of is the Green Mile.
Right.
And I understand why they chose that one. And I understand what they were getting at. And it, like you said, it was more to illustrate the trope.
Right.
But I would throw a challenge flag and just say that as an audience member, and again, as a white one, so if you are a person of color and you have a different perspective, well, yes, John Coffey, Michael Clark Duncan was a magical Negro, literally.
Yeah.
I don't believe that in that film he was there simply to further the plot of Tom Hanks, the white guy.
I don't know. Only one of them survived, honey.
But again, there's I don't want to get into a whole contextual thing about, you know, that film, but it was more about the idea, at least from my perspective, the idea of a miracle coming in the form of what people at that time and even now in a form that they would not accept. A big, muscular black man.
Okay, but like you said, it's literally the concept of the magical Negro. And I mean, this is exactly what they're talking about. If a person of color is saying, hey, this is fitting into that trope, then we have to listen to how they feel about it.
I'm not saying I'm not listening.
Okay.
I'm just saying it's one I would have.
You're just saying you're arguing about it.
I would like to have the conversation.
Okay.
Because that's one that I feel like my perspective is different from a person of colors on that one, and I would very much like to get that perspective.
As long as you were getting that perspective and listening to what they were saying and not trying to argue your points.
No, I'm trying to say that, you know, from my perspective, I don't feel like that falls into a harmful one like you could say Bagger Vance does.
I don't know. Presenting the good black man as the one who is got kind of a child's IQ, that could be pretty harmful.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
So, yeah, I don't either. And again, it's one that, from a strictly film criticism perspective, it'd be interesting to have the conversation on.
Or at least hear what their perspective is.
Yes. So. Okay.
See, we're actively trying to educate ourselves now. Huh?
See?
Anyways, so let's do grades.
All right. Yes, the end of the school year. Let's grade.
So I gotta give this one an A+.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, A+. I would watch it. I'd probably watch it again tonight. Like, I think that there's this is one of those that you could go back and catch things that you didn't catch before. I think it's uncomfortable in the way it needs to be uncomfortable, but entertaining enough that you're willing to put up with that discomfort. And like I said, I know it's totally pretentious and to say, but I feel like this is important. I think it's an important movie to watch, especially if you are a white person who is open to the idea of hearing what black people have to say.
Okay.
I think that if you were not a white person who is open to hearing what black people have to say and just are going to look at it defensively and try to argue its points, you're going to miss the whole idea of the movie. So you should probably just go watch something with Chris Pratt in it.
Which is funny, because if you are a person who is going to watch this and argue the point,
you're the one who needs.
You're you're just proving the movie's point.
Yeah.
That's kind of the funny catch-22 that I don't think a lot of people will understand is that
preaching to the choir.
Yeah, if you're arguing, and again, this is not to say that if you don't like it as a movie and it just doesn't work for you that's bad. It's just saying, you know, if you're arguing the points it's making, you're making its point.
Exactly.
I will also give it an A+.
Oh yeah?
I will. I think it did have a little bit of a pacing issue. I think it could have been trimmed up a little, but I liked all of it. Like I I liked the kind of laid back pace of it. I liked the time we took with the characters, and again, a very excuse me, very clever way of using the supernatural and the literary devices to tell a real world story, and I think it was masterfully done. Rod, I would put it up there with Rod Serling.
All right.
Or Keenan Peele.
Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele. God,
there you go.
So sorry, but yeah, like what he's doing with his horror films. This is kind of that.
All right.
So yeah, good movie. I think you need to watch it.
Highly recommend.
Yep.
Highly recommend.
Yep.
All right. Now we are off to watch a high school band competition.
Hooray!
Hooray!
So stay tuned for our review of that.
Oh no! No.
We won't do that. All right, but thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for listening. Thanks to the people who are listening constantly and are hopefully enjoying what we do. We appreciate it.
Even if you're like listening to it because you like to hate us and make fun of us, thank you for listening.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take that. I'm enough of an attention whore. I'll take that. Anyway, and thank you as always, my love, for just everything.
Yeah.
And we will be back later with more reviews. So thank you, and as always, drive safe, and we will see you at the movies.